And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast live from Los Angeles, California, where the great Jackie MacMullan has made a huge mistake, which is publishing an outstanding feature story when she is in the same city as me, because that means she has to come on my podcast, or because I will not stop asking her to. Jackie MacMullan, how are you?
I love being on your podcast. Now, can I just tell the story quickly that the last time we were on the podcast,
Sure.
We were talking about Shooting Touch, that organization I was involved with in Rwanda, and this is how much clout the Lowe Post has. Some gentleman from Georgia, whoever you are, I forget your name, sir, I apologize, listened, wrote it down, and made a very nice donation to the charity which helps kids in Rwanda. So that's the power of Zach.
It's called Shooting Touch, people.
Well, I didn't mean for that to happen again. I'm just saying, Zach, you got some juice. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
It would be a nice coincidence. So I like to do this when a writer I love and know writes something big. And today you came out with a monster Jamal Murray profile. And he's such a smart player to pick because he's one of these sort of swing players of the season. We don't know enough about him.
Exactly.
Now we do. So when did you pick him, and when did you go to Denver? Take us through the sort of origin story.
Well, I was watching him last year, and Doc Rivers had made an offhand comment to me about him a year ago. And he said, yeah, watch him. He said he could go either way. That's always a great comment, right? He could go either way.
Exactly.
And so I thought, oh, okay. And so I had my eye on him, and Denver was good. And the great Kevin Arnovitz and I had the exact same idea I did, and graciously said, no, you go ahead, you take it. I think mostly because my daughter lives in Denver, so it was a little bit of a junket for me.
I can't think of a better reason, honestly.
But really, it just was they were an interesting team. Jokic, that's another story we should do. But I liked the way Murray played. He played with a certain amount of fire, and I like emotional players. We were talking today on the jump about emotional shooters, which is what I call Russell Westbrook. So I just was curious about him. I didn't really know much about him at all, and started doing a little research. Started asking around. Brought me all the way back around to Doc Rivers, and I said, "All right, what is it about Jamal Murray?" And he told me, which was in the piece, that he was watching him play and he was just all over the place, missing shots like crazy. And he turned to Lawrence Frank and said, that kid's going to lead the scoring in someday. And Lawrence Frank is like, what are you talking about? He can't hit a shot. I mean, his rookie year, he didn't hit a shot for the first 5 games.
I had forgotten about
that. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Right. And then Doc just said, no, he's going to because he thinks he will. And so that was sort of the springboard. I guess I was in Denver, early December.
Okay.
Early to mid-December, spent 3 days there, got to talk to Jamal, got to talk to his teammates, the coaches, some of the opposing players, and then his dad came into town, and I got to speak with him. I actually spoke with him over the phone, but he was someone that I really thought I needed to meet because, of course, he was the central figure in the story, and I wasn't going to be comfortable writing about Jamal and his dad unless I actually got to sit down and meet his dad and talk with him a little bit.
So let's talk about the dad, because as you said, Roger is the center of the story. Just the details of their workouts when he was a kid, but push-ups in the snow, laps before school, conditioning routes straight uphill that will run sideways or backwards. He disconnects the TV, no cell phones. This is a sports parent. Sounds like a sports parent.
Right.
And usually when you get a parent like this, and he's in Denver a lot, I believe, right?
Yes. Well, his full-time job now is to
Jamal.
manage Jamal. So, yes, he doesn't live there. No, he lives in Ontario still. He has a younger son who he's also training, Lamar.
Now, when does it, before you get to Denver, I bet you already know he's going to be the centerpiece of the story, right?
Well, it's funny because I certainly had done a little research and there was some stuff in passing about his dad, but whenever I talked to NBA types, which is what we usually do first, right? Nobody knew anything about him. Nobody knew about the dad. And, Mike Brown was telling me a story about him playing the U.S. in a world Pan Am championship game, and the dad just wasn't coming up. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And then when I did a little bit of research and asked the Nuggets PR staff, and Nick O'Hare was very helpful with this story, so shout out to Nick. Then I started hearing about him, and then you start saying, oh, wait, uh-oh.
That's what I was going to get at, because usually when teams talk about parents like this or relatives like this, it's always bad. It's always we need.
But that's why this story was so cool. I thought, you know.
So You have a line in here. The Nuggets say Roger Murray has been a supportive parent who has never demanded more shots or more time for his son, nor has he launched a Murray baller brand, a baller shoe, which I like, or fed inflammatory quotes to the media. He's ever present, yet ever respectful. Did they tread carefully when talking about him, or are they just they're totally fine?
I think there's a little hesitation because you're talking about someone that you know is very, very important to Jamal. But, Tim Connolly was very open about it. When I was there, he saw Roger before the game. They hugged. I mean, he was genuinely glad to see him. He didn't see me, so he didn't do it for my benefit. And Michael Malone is the coach. Obviously, he's got to walk a bit of a fine line, but I thought his quotes were very revealing in themselves. His point is, yes, Roger's around. He knows Jamal better than he has certain ideas about what Jamal should be doing, but he's never let that interfere with what we're trying to do. And the bigger point that he made was, in today's NBA, with all the things we have to contend with, think about it.
Yeah.
Players in clubs, all, criminal activity. We could go on all day about all the stuff that goes on. For our biggest problem to be a father who's around and cares about his son, I'll take that problem, if you want to call it a problem.
How was Jamal when you got to sit down with him?
Well, he was a little reticent at first. We didn't know each other. And I was there for a couple of days. I think it helped that some of the other players knew me, the coaches knew me. I mean, Michael, my goodness, I covered his dad, Brendan, for years. I remember Michael when he was young. And so I think he had probably done his homework on me a little bit. And we sat down. He was a little defiant at times, which I think comes through in the piece, a little wary of me. I think for Jamal, it's not fair to have the story be totally about his dad because he's the one that did the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's the one that succeeded. And everybody makes that point, most of all his father. And the part that really caught me, and it's the only part that I worry a little bit about, because I really think this relationship, even though it looks unhealthy to all of us from the outside, and as you know, we were with a prominent assistant coach recently together who said, this is crazy, this is stupid, this is crazy. Having watched them interact, my only concern is at one point he said, when he was in the slump, he said, I don't want to let my dad down. When I miss a shot, I don't want him to be disappointed. If I make a mistake, I know nobody else is going to notice, but he's going to notice. So that was the only thing that gave me pause, and because you can't, when you make a mistake, you shouldn't look to your coach, but you sure as heck shouldn't look in the stands at your dad either.
Right.
So, but what I like and what I think I've seen is, and it's mentioned in the piece, is that, look, he's in the NBA. His horizons have expanded. They have to. And so Roger Murray doesn't know about sleep habits or sleep science or nutrition or he doesn't know about meditation, but some of the mental health things that these we have state-of-the-art things happening with these teams. And I think he knows, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I think that's why it works.
The meditation stuff is interesting. I didn't know that about him.
Right.
To tell people about how deep that goes for him.
So this father, we just read about the push-ups, the pull-ups. My favorite was they grew up in, they lived in Ontario, so they immediately flood all the basketball courts in the winter. And,
that's right.
And he dribbled a basketball on ice. And he said, I have very good balance. That's a learned behavior.
That was dribbling the ball on ice. Is a lot. That's a lot to ask.
Right?
Ice is very slippery.
No, right. And so to me, that was really.
You didn't have people who did that at the University of New Hampshire, like flood their lawn, were there frats at UNH?
There were frats at UNH.
None of them flooded the lawn with water to play hockey or something?
They did, but no one was dribbling a basketball that I can recall. They used, at UNH, the tradition is you throw a dead fish on the ice. You know this about UNH, right?
No.
They score a goal. Yeah, I don't think they were allowed to do it. It was a squid, and I don't know. I don't think they're allowed to do it anymore.
We had a tradition at Dartmouth. One of the frats iced their lawn.
Fun.
And at Winter Carnival every year, which is essentially just a party weekend.
Right.
You would line up beer kegs one after the other, and someone would, I think on skates, or maybe they would just run, I can't remember, skate up to the line of beer kegs and just jump over them.
Seriously.
As many as you could get.
Wow.
And
can you skate?
No.
I can't skate either, and that's terrible. I'm from New England.
No, I really would like to learn how to skate.
I can't skate. I do skate, but I don't know how to stop. I'm afraid to stop. And I think it was because when I was a kid, we grew up and there was a place called Rocky Woods in Medfield near where I grew up, and it was awesome. It was this big skating pond, and they had a little hut inside where you could get hot chocolate and everything. So our family used to go, and my sisters, Susie and Karen, they were both excellent skaters. And I had these really big feet, and they had me in those girls' figure skates, and I'm going to just declare this on the Low Post. Most people know this. I have an extra toe on my left foot. Mm-hmm. So the skates hurt.
Yeah, that would hurt.
And I just hated it. And so I would go inside and drink the hot chocolate. When I got older, I started dating my husband, Mike. He's like, come on, let's go skating. I'm like, nope, don't do that. Well, I wore his brother's hockey skates, and my feet felt better.
Interesting.
So then I could skate. Not really. I don't know how to stop. I can skate backwards, though. But
I have to say, I don't really have any desire to learn how to skate.
I do, just because I live in New England, and we live on a lake. We have a lake house in Ospey, New Hampshire, and in the winter, if it doesn't snow right away, it's just fantastic. And you know what else is funny about skating? I like to skate with a hockey stick, and we hit the puck because I used to play street hockey a lot. Yeah. And it's amazing how all of a sudden I feel comfortable with the stick in my hand. You can lean on it, and it's pretty interesting.
Okay.
There's nothing like pond hockey. Nothing like it.
They banned the keg jump at school.
They should.
And
they should. I'm in favor of that.
When I spoke to the sports analytics class there right before the season, and a few of us went out to dinner, and I asked their kids, their college kids, about it, and they did not even know what I was talking about. That's how old sad. I am now. They're like, yeah. What are you talking about? It's very sad.
That's sad.
Yeah, but he grew up in Kitchener, Ontario.
Yep.
Doing all this stuff.
I forget what you asked me. Sorry,
I don't
Zach.
even remember.
We went off on
the skating. That was one of the meditation.
Yeah. Meditation. Oh, the meditation. That's where we are. Okay, right. So his dad, Roger, in addition to wanting to have him be well conditioned, was very much, he was a disciple of Michael Jordan. That's how he fell in love with basketball, the dad, by watching that. But he was also a disciple of Bruce Lee and martial arts. And of course, meditation is a huge part of martial arts and kung fu. And so very early on, Jamal was meditating every day, set aside a certain amount of time every day to meditate, including one day when an assistant coach, Kenny Payne from Kentucky, came on a recruiting visit, and Jamal was done with his workout, and he gets up ready to go talk to him. His father's like, nope, you need to give us a few minutes. And there's Jamal sitting in the corner with his legs crossed and his eyes closed and meditating. And what I liked about it is he talked about that stretch we were talking about before, his first 5 games of his rookie year, 17 misses in a row. And he's like, I know what I got to do. I got to meditate so I can shoot better. And so he closes his eyes. All right, I'm going to meditate. But what he was really doing was all he was thinking about was how I got to shoot better. So there was a little bit of personal growth there when he realized, okay, meditation isn't to help me figure out how to shoot better.
Right.
It's to quiet my mind. It's to have me breathe. It's to have my body relax, to get my heartbeat lower, to take myself outside myself for just a few minutes every day. And so I kind of liked that he figured that out all on his own.
I need to learn how to do that. One of my favorite little aside, but when you have a story this long, it takes these little asides that I love. I love that Kyrie. So you talked to Kyrie.
I did. Yep.
Because he was famously mad that Jamal Murray tried to get 50
Very
points.
Very mad. Yeah.
Which I think you should just go get 50 points. I don't mind.
It's so funny. I asked a lot of players about this. I didn't put it in the story but I asked a ton of them, and it was absolutely everybody's like, I totally get why Kyrie did what he did, but I would have totally done what Jamal did. So Draymond Green was one of the people that said that to me. Everybody agreed that it was okay. I think what wasn't okay was what he did to Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, that was strange, and I'm glad you got into it in the story because it's funny. There are so many things that happen in the NBA every damn night. There's some like Devin Booker and Gorgie Jang last night,
right?
That you forget some of them. And as I was like 400 words into your story, and I thought, boy, I forgot the thing with Lonzo Ball. I wonder if she's going to get into the Lonzo Ball. He did it twice. He went at Lonzo twice. And the first time was for no reason, really, other than, everyone liked going at Lonzo.
Well, I think the reason was that, Lonzo was, not playing. He was struggling a little bit at that time. He wasn't, playing like a number 2 pick. And here's Jamal Murray, who no one's ever heard of from Ontario, the number 7 pick, who was like, yeah, man, I just outplayed you, and everybody should know it. Let me just do a little dance around you.
Yeah.
And, Cal Perry, who he played for at Kentucky, said he's walking around with a little chip on his shoulder. And I wish the story was already long enough, but I could have gone on all day about this whole idea of Canadian slights and how Canadian players feel lumped together. They're all soft, and
people say that about Canadian players?
They do. They absolutely do. And part of it is because I think a lot of them feel like Andrew Wiggins is the poster boy of Canadian players. And I always say, did you all forget Steve Nash?
Yeah, Steve Nash
right?
Not soft. Tristan Thompson's not
soft. And certainly
Jamal Murray
Murray
is for sure not soft. In fact, one of my favorite things about Jamal Murray is, he's like a bob and weave player. Like he and Jokic have that bob and weave give and go game.
Aren't they fun to watch, the two of them together? And they get along really well, by the way.
They do.
They do. They really do. And they're very, very different, but they get along great.
That is an odd couple. That's an NBA odd couple.
It is.
I
think Jokic just gets along with everybody. And actually, so does Jamal. His teammates really, really like Jamal. For all this intensity that I wrote about and his dad, everybody really likes him. He's a good kid. All the people that he got on the crosshairs with, Kyrie and Luke Walton, they're all like, oh, no, he's fine. We're past it. Oh, he's just a young guy. He's great,
But for all that bobbing and weaving and that low to the ground stuff, when he gets a lane to the basket, he goes for it. He will try and hammer people, and he is aggressive. He's very, very fun to watch.
He is. And he's very, he's been working towards this his entire life. And as he says, you think this is hard? The NBA's hard? Are you kidding me? Compared to what I've been doing, this is easy.
It's interesting, though, that he was both reticent with you and talked about slumps, because he's started every season in the NBA. It's only 3 now, very slowly.
Yes.
And I was in Denver last year in November, and he was just in a hellish slump. And not only that, he was passing up open three-pointers to drive in the lane and take these floaters that were driving me crazy watching, and subsequently I found out driving the coaches crazy and driving him crazy. And so I was there at a practice one day, and I had to interview 3-4 other people. I couldn't get Jamal. And Nick O'Hare, the PR person you just talked about, said, hey, I think Jamal's still here. I think he's shooting by himself in the gym. And he was just sitting there by himself, practice was over, shooting. Literally 0 people were in the gym. There wasn't even someone like cleaning up in the gym.
Yeah, well, he's going back there at midnight and doing this.
And he was shooting, and I waited for him to finish, and then I walked after him, and he didn't know me, so I don't blame him, but he was in such a funk. He didn't want to talk about what kind of funk he was in.
Sure.
He did not want to talk to me at all. He gave me some clipped 4-word answers. I didn't blame him. Like I said, dude, I wasn't upset. I just had to get him. It was part of the story. I had to get him. But I saw him like at the low point, and how sort of like, despite all the meditation and all the perspective you're talking about, like he was fighting himself, and it seemed that comes through in your story.
Yeah, it's still happening. And, Mike Malone pulled him aside earlier this year when he went to one of those little slumps. He's an inconsistent shooter, and that's what's keeping him from being an all-star. Maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody will squeak him in. I don't think he'll make it this year, but he's going to get some consideration, I would say. I don't think he's on my final ballot or yours, but he's in the mix, right?
We got to get the conference thing out.
I agree.
I mean, I did my full 12-man rosters because I like to start from scratch and do all of them. I vote for the starters like you, but then I do the whole rosters. And it's like, you get down to spots 11 and 12 in the East. You're like, oh my God.
Who am I going to put?
I'm reaching. And you get down to spots 11 and 12 in the West, and there's literally 20 guys, maybe 15 or 12, that you would put in the East game over anyone that gets in from the East.
Oh, it's funny. I saw your ballot, and I always do my own just for fun. I don't ever, publish it. But as you know, I'm not a huge LaMarcus Aldridge fan, but of course he's an all-star. I actually had to put him ahead of Karl-Anthony Towns.
Interesting.
Because I just finished a piece on Karl, and maybe that's why. And as much as I like Karl, and I mean, he's obviously very talented, I just think it matters, like, do you get it done consistently? And his numbers suggest that he does, but then I had this moment, where he was in Philadelphia and he just didn't show up for like a super big game. Mentally, just sometimes that happens to him.
Yeah, they did not show up in that game. It was really interesting to watch that and to hear you talk to them. I read the piece last week, obviously, to talk to them about it, and how, I mean, I think it was Teague who was outwardly just, we didn't show up. They didn't want to play.
Yeah, and Derek would have been that guy, but he was so distraught, he just didn't talk at all.
That I didn't know until I read your piece, that he was so upset that he just couldn't talk.
This means a lot to Derrick Rose. It's so much fun to see what's happening with him, and we addressed it a little bit on the jump today that he's figured out how to be just a more complete player. his shot selection has changed so dramatically. I forget the numbers. Almost 52% of his shots are in the restricted area of the paint now, much different than, of course, back in the day. He's shooting 43% from the three-point. I just can't believe it.
But
he's playing so under control, Zach, and he's playing with a clear mind. And I talked to him quite a bit about it when I was out there doing this story. Mm-hmm. And the idea that, he didn't know who he was. He's this young kid that gets thrown into the mix, and he's an MVP at the age of 22, and this whole city is depending on him. And then he has this catastrophic knee injury, and barely plays the next year, and then he's not the same, and everyone tells him you're washed up, and he's like, well, maybe I am. Am I washed up? I don't know. And he said to me, I didn't even know myself. He said, I didn't even know I was an introvert. I didn't know what an introvert meant.
Huh.
So some of these guys, self-discovery, it takes a while.
I want to talk more about Jamal, but now that we're on this, you just did this big piece on Cat and the Jimmy Butler thing, and coming out of the Jimmy Butler thing, and you went to Philadelphia and you talked to Jimmy Butler. I'm just curious, it's been many months of this now.
Right.
What do you think of Jimmy Butler? What's your takeaway?
I think he's on thin ice, Zach. I think he's on thin ice, and I think he's a very talented player. And no one's ever called him soft either.
Oh,
okay?
Hell no.
No, he's a very tough player, and he, on paper, would be exactly what you would want on a team, because he's not a selfish player. I would never say that about him. He defends. Boy, does he defend. He gets at it. He makes good decisions on the offensive end of the floor. But I don't know him well enough to know, is it real or is it bravado, this whole idea that I got to take everybody on, like, you're going to bully me, you're going to call me a bully, I'm going to bully you back, and all this stuff. And I can tell you that having spent a couple days in Philadelphia, they don't love it. And I think you probably, if you read the story, there was one Philadelphia person in the organization that said, if you want to get paid, be quiet. You might try that.
I've already said that I don't think he's getting the full 5-year max from them. And people think it's blasphemy, and his people think it's blasphemy. I don't think he's going to get the full 5-year max. Now, I think it'll be very close, but I think they're going to use that 5th year as the hammer and say, okay, you want the 5 years, you're going to get a little bit I don't think it's going to be like Jokic. Jokic didn't quite get the max. He got a tiny bit less than the max.
That's an interesting question. And, I would take it a step further. Are they sure they want him?
Well, they went in eyes wide open. They do a lot of deep intel.
No, they
Philly.
do.
They knew all the stories. They heard everything. But it's another thing to live it.
And you know what else? You can know all the research, and you can do all the research on that, but you can't possibly know what's going on inside Joel Embiid's head. And I'm telling you, Joel Embiid is the most important person on that franchise. It's not even close. He's got the ears of the owners. And if Joel Embiid decides Jimmy Butler's too much trouble, and I'm not saying that's what he thinks right now. I'm not saying that at all. But if it comes to that, Jimmy Butler's not winning.
They're the most fascinating chemistry experiment in the league. And I wrote about them last week.
Yes, you did. You did a nice piece on it. And I agreed with everything you said. Their parts fit sometimes, and then sometimes they don't fit at all.
Well, but you know what? And I don't want to rehash pieces. That's life. There are 3 star players, one of whom is an incredibly unique, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good way, and Simmons is just like a complete anomalous piece. But, if you want to win, you got to make it work. If you want, if Joel Embiid wants to, so let's just say, take your scenario. Joel Embiid decides he doesn't want to play with Jimmy Butler. You can't just play star player roulette until you get the one that you like the best.
And we should stress we're not saying that that's what he's doing.
No. It could be any of them. Let's say any of them decide that they don't want to be with the other one or the other two. You don't get to just look up, let's rotate Klay Thompson and let's rotate Brad Bealin. That's not how it works.
Right. But I will say this about Jimmy Butler. I think that it's legitimate if you're a player that plays with him to have questions sometimes about his demeanor. I think it's a fair question. We're on team number 3 now.
It's not for everybody.
No, it's not. He's like I said, on paper, he should be my favorite player in the league because he does all the things I really like. He does the dirty things. He does the defensive things. He's unselfish. There's all sorts of reasons to like him. But at some point, you got to stop taking out your sword and just trying to cut everybody's arm off.
Yeah. Let's go back to Jamal Murray.
Okay. He's not trying to do that.
You said there was some stuff on the cutting room floor about how they drafted him 7, and I'm looking at the draft now. I will tell you the picks in the 2016 NBA draft.
Right.
Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, Dragan Bender, that hurts. Chris Dunn, Buddy Hield, Jamal Murray.
Right. So the draft lottery, they have the draft lottery. The Denver Nuggets are pretty sure that they think Jamal Murray is going to go in the top 3 or 4, and they pull 7. And they all walk out of there just devastated because they loved this kid. He is who they wanted. I think if they picked third, they would have picked him third. I really do. And they're like, oh, my God, we're not going to get him now. So everybody kind of knew. I think Simmons 1, Brandon Ingram 2, Jaylen Brown 3. We heard that in Boston, but that was, you weren't sure. We heard a lot of names in and out of there. Chris Dunn, I remember thinking maybe the Celtics would take a flyer on at that point. So when Jaylen Brown goes 3, they're like, okay, maybe. They're thinking, Now, Jay Triano, who coached Jamal Murray in the Pan Am Championships that we mentioned, the first win for Canada in their history, in a 70-year history, because Jamal Murray hit all the game-winning shots. He's working for Phoenix, and he's in their front office, and he's like, look, I'm just telling you, Jamal Murray, man, like I'm telling you, this is who we should pick. So now we're talking 4. And they're like, well, we're not sure about his skill set, and can he really shoot, and how? And Jay's like, I'm telling you, he's just a winner. He's trying, and this is like going to break Phoenix fans' hearts. I know
they could be sitting here looking at a Jamal Murray, Devin Booker backcourt.
Yeah, and they picked Dragan Bender instead. And so now, then it's Buddy Hield. By the way, like a year ago, you'd say, oh, well, that was bad too, but Buddy Hield's been really good. So, I don't think we should just Buddy Hield being selected next.
Buddy Hield has been very, very good.
He's been very good. But I don't think he's Jamal Murray.
He's averaging 21 games, averaging more points per game than Jamal Murray.
I know he is, but that to me doesn't...
Not as much of a playmaker. I think most people in the league would take Jamal Murray over Buddy Hield. But
Buddy Hield has been pretty good. That's my point. But anyway, so there he was. They just couldn't believe their luck because they really considered it their luck. They had their eye on him all the way back before he was even at Kentucky.
I remember loud Pelicans Buddy Hield buzz. The Pelicans took him at 6. I remember that being a thing.
Almost like a fait accompli.
That people thought was going to happen. So I wonder what the pick, I wonder if it's the Bender pick. There's always the pick when you have a guy where that you really want. There's always the pick above you where you're like, that's the one. And if that swings our way, then our guy's going to. I wonder if it was Phoenix.
Phoenix or Chris Dunn, too, right, in Chicago, who just hasn't been healthy. And didn't Phoenix have 2 picks? Did they have Marquise Chris in that draft?
That is correct. They traded up to get Marquise Chris, and now did not work out.
No.
Did not work out. My favorite Kyrie Irving part of the story, by the way, is how he respects Mike Malone for saying...
I love that. Don't you love that?
Yeah, because I love that quote. When Mike Malone says, all you fans are coming here to see the Lakers, you can enjoy the game and take that L, take the L with you out the door. I love that. I love it
too. And I love that Kyrie said, so that's the kind of swag they have. That's what Jamal has swag. So he's totally fine with Jamal at this point, because he knows he's probably a little bit like Jamal in his own way. Kyrie, they're probably not as different as we think.
No, Jamal is really good. He's going to be better than I thought he was going to be a year ago, and it's going to be interesting to see what he gets for an extension,
right?
Because Denver will try to do that early.
And Jokic is just a delight. What a revelation! What a revelation! And Jamal's right. He should shoot more.
My
favorite. Should shoot more.
I love Jokic. I'm a complete Jokic true believer. I was early on Jokic, his rookie season, and I was high on the Nuggets this year, and one of my predictions for the season was they would host the first round playoff series.
That's awesome.
And one of their front office guys read that and called me, or no, I was bouncing it off him, and someone in their team, I shouldn't even say front office guy, someone in their team said, you're going to be right on because Nicola's in shape. What do you see Nikola? He's in the best shape of his life.
Right.
Well, they opened the season in LA. I was here. Nuggets Clippers. I go in the locker room. He's got his shirt off. I'm like, this dude's not in shape.
Yeah, he's squishy.
This is a squishy he has. He looks like me.
Yeah.
And I call the guy and I'm like, you told me Jokic was in shape. He's got a gut. I'm looking at his gut.
Yeah, right.
And they said, it's the best it's ever been.
That's funny. He's just a delightful guy. Clearly very fond of Jamal. Because I wondered, if you're Jamal and you get this single-minded idea about you want to be the best there ever is, and you're not even the best player on your team.
Yeah, but you know what's great about Jokic? You can be the leading scorer on your team.
No, that's right.
That's why everybody will love him.
No, and you know what? Jamal respects so much the way Jokic plays. He's learned from him. And that's all you can hope for. And you talk about the Nuggets. Let's remember Will Barton.
Just back.
Gary Harris was out, and someone else. I'm forgetting someone else. And then Monty Morris is revelation. I mean, let's give Tim Connolly some props, too.
God.
My gosh, the job he's done. Jokic was the 41st pick. Monty Morris,
second round
pick. They got a bunch of guys.
The Will Barton was a throw-in.
Malik Beasley.
Malik Beasley has been unbelievable.
He's been great. He's a really delightful kid, and he's Jamal's best friend on the team. And he said, one of the other things that make the story was that he can see it. He can see the wheels turning when Jamal misses shots, and he has to go down the end of the bench and said, "Cut the shoot, cut it out, just shoot, stop it."
Let's talk about the Grizzlies before you get out of here.
Okay.
Woj broke the news yesterday.
Shocking. Woj broke the news?
I know. And
so awesome.
it's time. And the Grizzlies are putting them on the block.
Yep.
Mike and Mark. And,
are you surprised? Let me ask you. I'm surprised they're this bad. I'm surprised.
I'm not surprised.
Okay.
I'm surprised. I'm not surprised at their record in the aggregate. I'm surprised at the manner in which they got there. They're 3-20 in their last 23 games. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, I just can't. I keep thinking, why? What? I love Mike Conley. I always have. I think Mark has been injured a good portion of the year. Tried to play through that the whole. I kept thinking he's trying to debunk the Europeans are soft kind of mantra, and he played through some injuries that I think have really hindered what he can do. I don't think that means he's done or anything.
No, but it does complicate his trade value because he has a player option for next year at $26 million, I think. And I predicted before the season that he would opt out and sign somewhere else. Now
That's what everybody says.
We're obviously going to. Looks like he might get traded to somewhere else before getting a chance to sign.
So let me ask you this: I think he's on for $25 million.
I think it's something like that.
Okay,
same
so
ballpark.
let me ask you now, after what's gone on this year, if he opts out, who's going to give him that money?
That's what I'm saying. That now the way he's played in the last 25 games, I don't know that that's an easy decision for him.
Right.
So
if I'm Charlotte, I'm going after him. I am.
Well, they're my favorite Marc Gasol team. I said that on the jump today,
true.
I said that on a podcast last week, and it's their problem is.
Who do you give up? What do you have to offer?
All their contracts are just so bad.
They are.
That no one is touching this Batum contract.
I know. Unless maybe you eat some of it.
So if you told me...
could you eat some of the Batum contract and then send him along?
I don't know.
Because I would just love to see Marc Gasol and Kemba Walker play pick and roll, wouldn't you?
Yes. If you were the Grizzlies, you could go to them, or if you were the Hornets, you could say, "Oh, look, we'll give you Cody Zeller, who makes 14 next year."
By the way, he's been pretty good for them. He's been hurt
when he plays, which
hurt.
is half of every season.
Right.
And the filler salary is the problem for so many of these teams. Charlotte's only 2 and change about 3 below the tax, so they can't take on a lot of money, or they can't. The salaries have to match very closely. Mark makes 25, I think, so you got to get close to 12 million more. Or 11 million more of extra money. Jeremy Lamb alone doesn't quite get you there, but maybe Cody Zeller, Jeremy Lamb, Malik Monk, and a pick gets you in the conversation. That would get you in the conversation, I think. Depending on the protections of that pick.
Yeah,
but they're my favorite.
Is what matters.
They're my favorite Gasol team because they're completely desperate to make the playoffs, and their center position is like a sinkhole of crap.
You know what? And it's their fault for signing Dwight Howard. It's not like everybody didn't know that was a bad idea. Now, we had no way of knowing he'd be out the whole year. But why would anybody think that was a good idea?
And no one understands why they didn't just waive him the same way that Brooklyn just waived him.
Yeah, it's weird.
I've said it before. My other Marc Gasol team is Detroit, and just a straight Drummond Marc Gasol swap where Detroit just gets off.
Detroit has to do something. They're the team I would put in the lead for Mike Conley for the same reason. Their pieces don't fit, and they were in Boston very early in the year, and I saw Dwayne Casey, and we were chatting a bit. And I said to him, what are you going to do with this team? Because these pieces do not fit. Now, of course, Dwayne Casey isn't going to say to me, I know, it's terrible. Listen, he's not going to say that. He's going to put the best face on it. But because the East is so weak, I think they could trade for Mike Conley or Gasol, either one, and help themselves immeasurably. But who's going to take back? Would you take back Reggie Jackson if you're Memphis?
I think they're a candidate for both. Not both together. That's too big of a deal. But either. I should say either.
Either, right.
The very first Mike Conley deal I pitched was Reggie Jackson, some filler that is actually very important what that filler is, and an unprotected or top 3 protected Detroit pick, and maybe throw in Stanley Johnson and say, here's a young guy, take a shot on Stanley Johnson.
I like Stanley Johnson.
Memphis is only a couple $100,000 below the tax themselves. So they may have to make another trade to shed a little money here or there. But I agree with you. But that's the model of deal I think Memphis has to look at is bad contract, intriguing filler, really good asset that's a draft pick, and I know you have a favorite Mike Conley team. We'll talk about it in a second. And I think it's just going to be a matter of who gives us the best draft assets within that model.
So because where do you stand on Reggie Jackson at this point? Where does the league stand on Reggie Jackson at this point? Just because it didn't work in Detroit, where nothing works in Detroit, I'm assuming that's killed his trade value, right?
I don't think anybody wants Reggie Jackson.
Okay, so that's sort of my point.
Yeah,
so,
you'd have to, like I said, I could see them arguing over the protections on that pick.
On the pick, right.
And also whether Stanley Johnson, who's essentially a bust, gets it done.
I think a change of scenery for Stanley Johnson would help.
Hollinger likes the second draft guys. Or if you just say, we don't want him, we want Luke Kennard. And then you start to think if you're Detroit, Mark's pretty old, or Mike, whatever it is, whichever one of them. Mike is, but they're my favorite Mike team. You got another Mike team. Who's your Mike team?
Well, I would love it if the Indiana Pacers would take a deep breath and go after Mike Conley. Because every time I talk to somebody about the Pacers in the East, they all say, yeah, but who's the clear-cut leader on the team? It's not Oladipo. Not that he hasn't been great and he hasn't played well and everybody loves him. That's all fine. But who's the leader on that team? And who's the point guard on that team? If you get Mike Conley, you get both of those things at once.
See, I love the Pacers as a fit for him, much like I love the Jazz as a fit for him, although I don't see a deal there. People have proposed Rubio, Favors, and a draft pick. And the problem with a deal like that, although it makes sense, is that Utah is going to be very good.
Yeah, they're going to be good.
Your draft
pick isn't going to be that good.
Isn't good.
Right. But that would hold true with Indiana's pick, too.
Indiana is the same boat. But I love the idea for Indiana because they've carved out all this cap space this coming summer. All their deals are up except, Turner and Oladipo and some small ones.
Right.
But, I just don't think a franchise like that can bank on doing better with that cap space than Mike Conley at age 29, 30, 31.
You know what? I couldn't agree more, Zach, because I remember when Larry was, still very active in the front office, he would often talk to me about the struggles of getting premier free agents to go there.
Mike is from Indiana.
Right. And here's the other thing. As much as I love the Simons, because I think they've been really great owners, they stay out of the way. They let their guys do their thing. You never hear about them. They're never in the news for all the wrong reasons. They hesitate to spend. And it's hamstrung the Indiana Pacers more than once. They don't ever want to be over the cap. And I think if you took Mike Conley on, the only way it would make sense is then this summer if you added another piece that could put you over the top. And I think that would put them over the cap, and I just don't know if they'll do it.
So here's why I'm so intrigued. I agree. Everything you said is true. And you knew Larry was going out the door when he said on record to me, for reasons I will never understand because I have no relationship with him, that there was a cap on how much he could spend, and he put it on the record. I was like, well, he's leaving.
That's been true all along.
Yeah,
he loves the Simons. They've been great to him, but it's a problem. So why would it change now is my question.
But they need a point guard, and I think there's a sense within that team of we are maxed out this talent level, and when we get into the playoffs, we know that we don't have the best player in any series against any of these other teams in the East, and we need to close that star gap a little bit. Now, Mike is not as good as the best players on those teams in the East, but it gets them a little closer.
Right, and if you don't give Oladipo and you don't give up Miles Turner, you don't give up Sabonis, that's a pretty nice little nucleus. And then you go this summer and you try to grab somebody.
So this is why I like it. You just nailed it. So everyone is pitching these deals where they give up Tyreek and Collison and Kojo. So all these expirings and a draft pick. Well, that's not good enough. Like Memphis is not doing that. All those expirings are meaningless to them.
Right.
Where it gets interesting to me is if you throw Aaron Holiday in.
Who's a good young player, we
Aaron
think.
Aaron Holiday is going to be good. If you throw him in and an unprotected pick, maybe you start to get my attention a little bit. I could even see Memphis saying, well, Aaron Holiday is, a marginal first round pick and your first round pick is going to be bad. We don't care. We want Sabonis. And that's where Indiana is going to say, ooh.
Yeah, he's so good.
I still think, but if you gave Indiana Conley somehow, and they had cap flexibility, and they have both Turner and Sabonis, I still think eventually they're going to have to trade one of those guys because I just don't know if they can play together for more than 10 or 12 minutes a game.
Okay.
But Indiana's going to be able to do that from a position of strength. Like, everyone in the league knows how good those guys are.
Right.
If you flip that into some good stuff, like,
yeah, you're on your way.
You got a lot of stuff all of a sudden.
Turner's interesting to me because every year I voted for him. This is the year he's going to be most improved. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, man, maybe he's never going to take the leap. But he's really had a very good, sneaky good year, especially defensively. He's just been, which is really where he makes his money, I guess, on that end of the floor. And I was asking Nate McMullan the last time I saw him about him, and he said, it's no trick, or it's not like, all of a sudden he was never dedicated in the weight room or anything. He just needed to grow up. We forget how young these kids are. They just need time to grow up and to figure out what it takes. Like Jamal Murray, he's young. These kids are young.
Very, very young.
And it's easy to forget that.
You have any other teams you like for one of these guys?
No. I think it's going to be hard. I think all these scenarios we've talked about. I mean, I know Tracy was talking about Orlando for Conley. I understand why they would do that. And I know what your point was, where they're not there yet, so they're wasting that. I think if you're the Orlando Magic and you've had no buzz for the longest time, and you could get into a playoff series, which you maybe could because the East is so bad, and you could play a first-round playoff series in the Amway Center, and Orlando Magic, the most annoying thing I've ever heard in an arena. Then, you fill that place up, and you get people a little interested again. And even if it isn't the best thing for you to do right now, I don't know that every franchise is always operating under what the best thing to do long-term is. So maybe that makes some sense.
I still don't see it. I've been wrong many times before. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Dallas is the most obvious team for either one.
Yeah.
Dennis Smith Jr. in a big contract.
Okay, but if I'm Memphis, well, I feel bad for Dennis Smith. I feel badly for him. And Tracy touched on it today when we were on the air. You're a kid that comes in as a lottery pick, and you're somewhat of a little bit of a sensation, right? You have a good rookie year, you score points. You're not really a super efficient player, but players don't get hung up on that.
You do things
GMs and coaches do, right?
You do exciting athletic things.
Yeah, and people like you. Yeah, and you're going to be a star. And then here comes Doncic, and then all of a sudden it's like, we don't need him. And that's pretty hard. Again, we're talking about young guys. We're talking about guys in their early 20s. That's pretty hard to process. So I'm not ready to give up on Dennis Smith as a valued member of a team.
No way. And I wouldn't be ready to give up on him as a valued member of the Mavericks. Now, again,
but the metrics tell us, they're a plus 5.2, I think it is. I
know all the numbers, and I know some of the buzz out of the locker room is that they were ready for him not to take the Doncic well, and
but they're good friends. They've done fine.
Yeah.
But what's funny? So this is something Gino Auriemma, the great UConn coach, told me many years ago, and he said to me, when a coach loves you, it's the greatest thing in the world. But the day the coach stops loving you, no matter what you do, you could score 100 points and have 50 rebounds. He's already made up his mind he doesn't like you anymore. And no matter what you do, you're never going to change his mind once he's made up his mind. And that's what I keep thinking of with Rick Carlisle, his wonderful glowing comments notwithstanding in the last 24 hours.
If they think they don't need Dennis Smith, what they will need eventually when they are ready to be good is somebody like the version of Dennis Smith that they want.
Right.
A point guard sized person who can defend other point guards, handle the ball when Doncic doesn't have it, attack closeouts and get to the rim. If it's not him, you got to find it somewhere else. You might as well try and see if it can be him.
Well, it sure looks like that's what they're planning on doing. So
I think New Orleans for Conley I like. Making the math work is tough, but they have.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They need to do something big.
Solomon Hill, E'Twaun Moore, Wesley Johnson, and an unprotected pick is probably not enough, and they're not going to throw in 2 picks. So,
I was going to say, although an unprotected pick, if it's next year,
yeah.
If you add Mike Conley, does he have enough time to pull you out of the Western abyss to get you up to the playoffs?
You could throw Frank Jackson in. I'm not sure that entices me enough.
I don't think so.
Washington for Gasol. Mahinmi, Markieff Morris, and an unprotected pick, or an unprotected pick in a second. The Wizards keep saying they're not going to give up draft picks, so I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't either.
The Heat, the Spurs.
The Heat. So can we just talk about the Heat for a second? So one mistake after the next. It's stunning to me. Pat Riley, I have admired probably because I was so young when I came into the league, and the Lakers. He was the coach of the Lakers, and he would never even look at me, never mind talk to me, just because I was from Boston.
I love it.
Like, yeah,
I love it.
He's like that. And over time, like I just wore him down, So now, but I just have this incredible respect for him because I've seen him at his best, at his worst. I've seen him when he was on top, but I've seen him, when he was coach of the year and they fired him the next day. I've seen it all, and I trust his mind. I ask him a lot of questions, and sometimes he answers them, and sometimes he doesn't. But they haven't done a great job there, Zach. The Johnson contracts.
That summer hurt them.
Yeah.
That summer hurt them. The Justice Winslow contract looks like it's going to be a good contract.
Yeah, he's a good player. Danny Ainge lusted after him forever and a day.
Josh Richardson.
Yep, that's fine. But they're hamstrung with a whole bunch of, like, the Kelly Olynyk contract. I mean, I covered Kelly day after day. He's one of my favorite people on this earth, and he was a plus minus darling and all that. But he's logging DNPs now.
I know it's not going well. But they have Bam, they have Josh Richardson, they have Winslow, and they're going to have cap space in a couple summers, and they're Miami, and they're going to swing. They'll get themselves
they'll swing for the fences.
Chris Wallace used to work for the Heat way back when, I believe. They have a good connection with Chris Wallace. There will be phone calls between the Heat
always and
the Grizzlies.
But this little morass, this little lull they've been in now. We're going on how many years?
Well, since Braun left, basically. I mean, they had the 1 year they made the playoffs.
And believe me, that was devastating. They
year.
did nothing wrong there. And I always go back to one thing that Pat Riley told me was back when they got the Heatles together, the Bosh, LeBron, and D. Wade, it was all set and they had an unwritten agreement. And then all of a sudden, when it came to be $5, they wanted to add that extra year. And by adding the extra year, all those players requiring that, he had to start renouncing players right and left. Yeah. And he said to them, I hope you know you're going to destroy us for the future. And it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth it. But if they had just not done that, it would have been completely different. So I have never forgotten that.
One thing I should have said about Indiana and all those expiring contracts is I think Memphis could look at those expirings and at least say, hey, maybe if we get them now, we can flip them
later
before the deadline.
Yeah, possibly.
You want to know my favorite Mike Conley, just the absolute most bonkers Mike Conley trade would be? To Philadelphia for expiring contracts and Markelle Fultz.
Wow.
And then Philly has Conley, Butler, Simmons, and Embiid.
Wow.
And you cannot pay all four of them going forward. Mathematically, this isn't a war. The Warriors got very lucky trying to being able to balance everything for as long as they did.
And their rent's coming here too.
Conley then gives you leverage with Jimmy. A little bit.
Like that. I love that.
I don't think that will happen because
Memphis can't afford to do that.
That's just too much. Well, maybe throw in another pick or something, but that's my bonkers one.
I like that. But Markelle Fultz, I still believe it can happen for him. Why wouldn't I believe that? It's funny. We were talking the other day when Doncic had the triple-double. He was the second youngest player in NBA history to have a triple-double. The first youngest was Markelle Fultz.
That's unbelievable.
Isn't it?
I really hope we're not reciting that stat in like 20 years. It's the only thing that is relevant about Markelle.
I hope that for him too. I do. And I don't see how he can stay in Philly. He needs to change the scenery.
It's over. It's just a matter of when. And I don't know what to believe. I've given up trying to figure out what to believe. All right, you've got to go. You've got to go do other things because you're in demand.
Apparently, I do. Look at that.
And you're Jackie Mack. The story on Jamal Murray is why no stage is too big for the Nuggets' Jamal Murray, and how Jamal Murray was raised to become a star. It's on ESPN.com. Jackie is the best. It's a great story. Read that. Read the Cat one, which I didn't get to talk too much about. The Karl-Anthony Towns one was awesome too. Jackie, I always appreciate you lending a little bit of your time to this silly exercise.
Absolutely. Anytime you want, Zach. This is my favorite part of my week so far.
Oh, good. That's very nice to hear. All right, Jackie Mack, everybody.